Hey guys, how you doing? I once heard a story from a good friend about a guy who was wealthy, but he didn't quite realize it. The story begins with a guy who lived in a simple home that can be best described as a pioneer's cabin, kind of like the one you see in front of you. There was no running water, no air conditioning, no refrigerator, and a single window, which was a luxury back then, even especially more if it had glass in it. A few pieces of furniture that he hand built, and of course the staple of that day, a fireplace. It was a necessity. The guy sat at a small wooden table that he'd handcrafted, eating his breakfast, which consisted of berries and bread, and he drank a glass of warm milk from the barn. Now the guy muttered to himself, "I am tired of being poor. I wish I had more. So I'm going to pray on it." Now the guy would leave his house daily and begin his 7-mile walk to his job at the grist mill in town that paid about $1 a day. On his way to work, he would pass camps that contained new settlers who were looking for work, shelter, and whatever little food they could find. The guy would put in long, grueling 10-hour days, and he would come home each night exhausted. Now, he worked 6 days a week, and when he got home, he had additional chores to do on top of working, which was quite common back in the day. He would angrily go about his chores, and he would say, "I am tired of being poor. I wish I had more." Several years went by, and the yearning to have more grew. One day, the guy, he just finished his breakfast, and he was preparing to head to the grist mill for work. And he looked outside and saw a wild brush fire just raging down the hill toward his house. And he got out of his house just in time as the fire completely engulfed his house and destroyed everything he had. Now, he didn't know what to do, so he stayed home for several days trying to rebuild his life. But he just couldn't make any progress. You see, supplies back then were limited, and of course he had no one to help him. And now he had no breakfast, no dinner, and no shelter. He went into town to talk to his boss, and he just realized that he'd lost his job because he hadn't been to work. Saddened by this fact, he started walking back past the camps toward his house, and he stopped at one of the camps nearest his house, and he sat down and began to tell his stories of misfortune to the settlers. While he was there, he really began to notice that the sheer amount of deprivation of basic necessities were pretty bad. People were dirty, sick, had no shelter, no work, and some hadn't eaten for several days. While he was sitting there, a settler came up to him with an uplifted spirit, smiling and shouting in great joy, "I'm rich! Praise God!" The settler explained that his family had no shelter, very little food, no job, and had been living that way for so many years. He shared how much he prayed every day for better times, but he added that he was blessed to have what he had and be alive. So the guy asked him, "How is it now that you're rich?" And the settler explained that he went to town and was hired at the grist mill for a position that had just opened. The settler said, "I'm rich because my family can now eat at least one meal a day for sure, and soon we'll have enough money for a shelter." The guy walked away from the camp with his head down, finally realizing how rich he used to be. You see, some focus on prosperity gospels where riches are a sign of God's blessing, and others focus on poverty gospels where being poor makes you more righteous in God's eyes. But Proverbs 30 verse 8 reminds us, "Keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread." You see, rich or poor, we all have the same responsibility to keep our priorities straight, to commit our work to the Lord, to avoid wasting our lives on things that won't last into eternity, and to be good and faithful stewards. And lastly, Proverbs 22 verse 2 reads, "Rich and poor have this in common, the Lord is maker of them all." God bless you all.